This is the time that billions of people will celebrate Christmas. Candles, carols, and manger scenes, and Christmas plays, and shopping, and giving of gifts and receiving of the gifts. The story will be told over and over again about Gabriel's visit to Mary, how baby Jesus would be laid in a manger, how the Magi come from the east. And the story is so familiar, real familiar to us. And we hear it again and again and again. And I'm sure there's great diversity, how customs are in different parts of the world and different family traditions. And some open gifts on Christmas Eve, and some wait till Christmas morning when Santa comes, and some wait till they get with the family and they travel far to be with family. Mark Twain said, "Familiarity breeds contempt." In the beginning, we wanted the Lord's presence in our life. We wanted this presence. And then it seems that somehow with the familiarity, we kind of get with the norm. This is the way it is. And we just go through the motions sometimes. We just go through the habit and the routine, and we forget about the real meaning. The Bible becomes dry. The testimonies, brothers and sisters, become very familiar. We could give them ourselves. The songs we sing, we know. We act like we don't know them, and we got to look at the screen, or we look in the hymnal, but we know them. We're not moved. The wonder somehow leaves. It's gone. 500 years ago, Martin Luther said that the mystery of humanity of Christ is that He sunk Himself into our flesh is beyond all human understanding. That God, who was fully divine, took upon Himself a human body to live among us is a certainty beyond me. But in reading the Bible account, I can see that His doing so was absolutely necessary for our redemption. Doing so was absolutely necessary. I thank Levi for reading the scriptures this morning to us that help us to get a glimpse at the birth of Christ, to get a glimpse of the birth of our Savior. As we revisit the story, we see that it was the Roman Empire, the government there, that declaring that there needed to be a census, and so that they all had to register for the census. And Mary and Joseph, being a descendant of King David, had to make the journey back to Bethlehem to register for the census. When they arrived there, the Bible tells us that there was no room for them in the end. Now, not too long ago, we can remember some of the hurricane events and when Hurricane Katrina hit. And if you've seen TV, the lines of traffic trying to get out of the city, line bumper to bumper to bumper to bumper. And they traveled inland. I remember getting on the phone, trying to find churches that were close to the coast. And you had to come quite a far in before you found somebody that had power, somebody that you could talk to. And they said, "We're full. we need some supplies," or we've got hundreds of people laying in our fellowship hall on cots. And the motels were full, and you could hear stories about people how they couldn't find a place. I remember that there were some families that got all the way back here into Kentucky, here into Prestonsburg, to find a place to stay. Now, I'm sure there was other places closer, but when that event hit, it was tough to find a place to lay your head. People were sleeping in their cars. People slept for weeks in the dome. For weeks because people couldn't get in or out. Mary and Joseph, no doubt, were not the only people that could not find a place to sleep here in Bethlehem. Hundreds of people were looking for a place to stay, and Mary and Joseph had made the week-long journey. And Mary gave birth to Jesus, wrapped him in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger. And while all this was going on, the angels appeared to the shepherds in the field to bring them good news. They broke out in song, giving the story its meaning. The angels told their story that a Savior had been born. Now, as I think about this, and through some reading this week and some studying, this was an event that had took place or been foretold hundreds of years ahead of time. That Jesus would be born. They were told the story to the angels. Angels told the story to the shepherds, and the shepherds said, let's go into the city to tell the story. And so they began to tell the story to everybody they saw. Anybody that would listen. That a Savior. Verse 18 says, and all that heard it wondered at those things which were told to them by the shepherds. And on the 8th day, Mary and Joseph circumcised the boy. Following the Lord's instructions, they named the baby Jesus. Now, a lot of people saw wonderful things happen that night. We see the birth of Christ. It resulted in praise from the angels, from the people. Now, we can only speculate really about how much the angels knew about what was taking place, about what was happening or going to happen. But there's no doubt in reading the scriptures that there was excitement that night. That Jesus was being born. The Savior, God Himself, was being born. Now, we all have to think, and I really never thought about this that much, but we sing Silent Night, Holy Night, and He didn't make a sound, and He was laid in, and we think of it being very peaceful. But I have to believe that there was probably a war going on in heaven. Because Satan did not want this event to happen. This was been foretold. There is no doubt that the angels were battling because this was the Savior of mankind. Satan was cast out of heaven already because of his belief in himself, because of his pride, because of sin. It was foretold that there would be a Savior of woman, that He would destroy or take hold back what Satan had. And I believe that there was a battle. If we read Revelations, it kind of foretells the battle that was going on. It kind of shows about the battle. There was an all-out war. Satan and demons did not want this event, the Christ, the Messiah, to be born. Luke tells that after the shepherds raced to the town to see for themselves, that the angels, they left too, praising God. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how these men felt when they left and they saw the Savior, the salvation of Israel, the promised King of Kings and Lord of Lords? How they felt in their hearts, the excitement that they must have had, that they had to tell everybody that they saw. C.S. Lewis said, I think we delight to praise what we enjoy, because the praise not merely expresses, but completes the enjoyment. It's not out of compliment that lovers keep on telling one another how beautiful they are. The expressed delight is incomplete till it's expressed. that delight is incomplete until it's expressed. Just to have it in your heart is not enough. C.S. Lewis says that it's got to be expressed. It's not enough to think that your wife is beautiful, guys. You need to tell your wife she's beautiful. It's not enough just to love the Lord. You need to tell Him that you love Him. If you've watched Tebow much, if you've been watching NFL football, if you've been watching news in any sort, you've seen Tim Tebow, and his story of how he loves Jesus. And the commentators are down on him, and the sports writers are down on him, and other football players are down on him. And they interview him, and he says, I got to tell him because he's the most important thing in my life. First and foremost, he says, I want to thank and praise my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. If you just tell your wife that you love her one time, that's not enough. You got to tell her. If she's the most important thing in your life, you got to tell her that you love her. And that's what he said about Jesus. If He's the most important thing in my life, shouldn't I keep telling him that I love Him?